I'm going to give you the most valuable financial advice you'll ever get in your life. It comes from Steve Edwards, who describes himself as a hiring manager. I don't know for what company. This is just on Twitter. And here's his advice, which I will amplify. So hiring manager Steve Edwards says, here's a tip from a hiring manager. I will never revoke your offer because you ask for a higher base salary, more stock, a signing bonus, relocation assistance. I might not be able to offer any of that, but then I'll have to say no. But it's probably safe to ask. That's the most valuable financial advice you'll ever get. Because when people get an offer that they've been wanting, such as a job offer or a contract or some kind of business offer, in my case, it's usually offers to do books or contracts or speeches or whatever. And once somebody's made an offer, they're mentally committed. They want you. If you don't do a good job of negotiating for what you need, you're not going to gain respect. You might lose a little bit. If somebody accepts the first offer you make for employment, I just think, well, they're not going to negotiate for me. You know, if I hire somebody who can't negotiate for the job, how could I possibly expect them to negotiate on my behalf when they're working for me? You wouldn't expect that. So the hiring manager is quite accurate in saying you should ask. I'll tell you the first time that I learned this. I've told this story before, but it's a good story, so it's worth repeating. When Dilbert first started taking off, and I started getting a little bit famous, I was still working my day job, but I was becoming known for doing the comic on weekends and nights. And I was running in newspapers, and one of the newspapers was in Canada, and a Canadian event organizer contacted me, and I was in my cubicle at my day job. And she said, we wanted to pay you to come up and give a speech to a group of petroleum engineers. And I said, I don't do that kind of work. And she said, well, but you could, right? I mean, we'll pay you, so you could do that kind of work, couldn't you? And I said, but you know, I don't really do that. I don't give speeches. So she said, but if you did, now what would you charge? And so, of course, I have a degree in economics, so I never say yes or no to things. I only say what my price is. Because if she had said, we'll give you $1 billion, I would have said yes on the spot. If she said, we'll give you $10, I would have said no on the spot. So it wasn't really a question of whether I would do the speech or not do a speech. It was always a question of price. All right, that's my worldview. And so the organizer said, well, why don't you get back to me and tell me what price you would do it for? Now, remember, I've never done a speech, and it was a small group of people. I think there were maybe 25 people total. What do you think I should charge for it? I had no idea. So I went to somebody who worked at my publication syndication company at the time, somebody who was more experienced. And I said, somebody asked me to do a speech, basically just to talk about myself and make some jokes. What should I charge? And he said, well, why don't you, when I told him I didn't want to do it, he said, well, charge $10,000. Because one of two things will happen. Either they'll say yes, and you get $10,000, which you'd be happy with, or they say no, and you say, oh, okay, well, that was my price. So just put a price on it. Yeah, go high and put a price on it. Now, when he said $10,000, I laughed. I said, I can't charge $10,000 just to talk to 25 people for half an hour. All right, that's a little bit ridiculous. And my more experienced mentor said, just ask for it, see what happens. Just go ahead, you'll be surprised. So I actually had to practice in the mirror to say $10,000 without laughing, and that's actually true. I actually practiced out loud to myself, saying the number without acting like I didn't mean it or I was laughing. So I called her back, and she says, did you think about it? I said, yes. What would you be willing to do it for? And I said, I'd be willing to do it for $10,000. And there's this pause on the other side, and I'm waiting for the response because I'm thinking there's no way she's going to say yes to $10,000. And she goes, "We'd also pay for your first class travel, of course." And that's when my life changed, because it was one of those moments when I realized that I had no idea what my economic value was. No idea. And so I said yes. I did that speech. It was terrible. In fact, they even told me it wasn't good. Imagine giving a speech and having your organizer say, "Well, you know, sort of okay, not really that good," because it was the first time I'd ever done it, and I would agree it wasn't that good. But I got better at it, and demand kept increasing, and so I would increase my price so I didn't have to do so much of it that I couldn't do my other work. So I increased it to 15,000 to give a speech, and people were offering it. Amazingly, people were offering me $15,000 to just show up and give a speech, and they'd pay for travel as well. And that worked out, so I raised it to 20, 25, 30, 35, 45, 50. The most I've ever been paid for a speech was $100,000. I won't tell you who, but it was a big company. And they paid me $100,000 to talk for an hour and take some pictures. And they paid for travel as well. Now that's the most I ever got paid, but I was in that 50 to 100,000 range for a while. Now I don't do speeches anymore. It's a little bit dangerous, and it wasn't the lifestyle I enjoyed traveling around. But take that lesson with you. The person who is the least understanding of their own economic value is you. You probably don't know what you're worth. So ask for a little bit more than you think you're worth. You'll probably get it. And if you don't, you'll probably still get the job, or at least the option to get the job. So the best advice you'll ever get is don't undervalue yourself. Ask for too much, see what happens.